Hi, I'm Phobos and you are watching A Game to Remember. Today's game was more for a niche market and most of you probably never played it before. Most of you probably never heard about it before, but let me tell you, you're truly missing out. When you hear about the Dynasty Warrior series, most of you will think of completely over-the-top battles in ancient China, with one man defeating hundreds of soldiers at once. And of course with the mandatory cheesy voice acting, that's also part of the series. Koei, the developer of the game, realized really fast that there's a huge fanbase around these games, so no wonder that this series has a lot of installments, most of them for the PlayStation 2. And when the series is well received, what will follow? Well, right, of course, spin-offs. Dynasty Tactics was one of these spin-offs. My friend and I were hardcore fans of the Dynasty Warrior series, and we even debated the historical facts and encounters on a regular basis. When Dynasty Tactics came along, my friend bought it instantly and told me that this is the best strategy game of all time. Saying that, I didn't really believe him. At the time I was hugely into Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos, and let's not forget StarCraft Brood War. I considered either of them the best strategy game of all time, and until today they have a huge following, especially StarCraft with StarCraft 2 of course. So when I finally got my own PlayStation 2, I asked my friend to try this game out for myself. And here we are, my memories of Dynasty Tactics for the PlayStation 2. Enjoy. Welcome to ancient China, a period of time where a few chosen men and women were able to slaughter through hundreds of thousands of trained soldiers without even blinking once. At least according to Koei's Dynasty Warriors franchise. Like I said in the introduction, my friend and I used to play so much Dynasty Warriors back in the day, so when Dynasty Tactics came along, we were intrigued. But I guess most of you guys never actually played the game, a lot of you might have never even heard of it before, so I suppose I should explain how the game is played. Anyone who is expecting a base building strategy game right now will be disappointed. There's no such element in Dynasty Tactics. Given the name, this game is more about executing tactics and battle while having an overall sense of strategy for the greater scheme of things. First, you will have to decide between 3 different heroes, Liu Bei, Cao Cao and Sun Ce. Each one of them represent a given kingdom, namely Shu, Wei and Wu, and if you played the Dynasty Warriors game at least once, you might be familiar with these factions. Each hero also represents a distinct storyline, which grants lots of different plot choices, which also result in different cutscenes and even different endings. These plot choices can fundamentally change which ending you will get, and just to make things clear, we are not talking about cookie cutter endings like in Mass Effect 3. Most endings in Dynasty Tactics are radically different and therefore you were able to play through the game multiple times while still enjoying each playthrough a ton. On a side note, one playthrough would approximately take up to 10 hours, depending on how good you are at the game. In each chapter of the game, you would be given a specific task, which you had to complete in a given time. These tasks might be to seize a certain city or to defend one. Sometimes they are even more specific, or you have to choose which task you want to complete. And this is where the different plot choices are decided most of the time. On the world map, you also could recruit new officers and form armies, which consist of a leader, a strategist, and 2 generals of your choice. The generals differ in strength, intelligence and leadership, which determine how powerful certain tactics or combos will be in combat. It is also recommended to assign an intelligent man as the strategist, since that will enable you to use trumps between turns, which are basically superpowers to weaken the enemy or to strengthen your own army. But they are completely random, so you couldn't decide when to use a trump and which trump you will get during combat. Another benefit of having intelligent strategists was to have better options on starting positions, which also grant bonus tactics for the strategists in question. And on a side note, strategists were also able to link tactics, an ability which you really had to get used to as soon as possible to achieve the best results in combat. Now I've been talking a lot about the tactics, so let's explain how they work in combat and how combat in Dynasty Tactics works in general. You can have up to 2 armies on the battlefield, which makes up to a maximum of 8 generals per battle. Your ultimate goal is to defeat the enemy leader, indicated by the huge flag he is carrying around. If either of the leaders is defeated, the battle is over. Combat in Dynasty Tactics is turn-based, and depending on how high the morale of the troops are, each general is given his or her turn. The troops of a general essentially indicate his hit points, and the morale can be increased by standing close to a supply tent, certain tactics, or attacks from the rear or flank. You have the option of using a basic attack or go for a special attack called Tactic. By using tactics, you might not only do more damage than by just attacking normally, you can also inflict confusion, which will deny the next turn of the enemy general and cause more damage to him. The best outcome, however, is to trigger combos. These combos are the most awesome thing ever. As you may or may not know, some of the generals in the Dynasty Warriors franchise are much better and much more powerful than others. By performing great on the battlefield and increasing the number of triggered combos, you would inflict much more damage than by just using one tactic at a time. It is safe to say that chaining as many tactics as possible should be your ultimate goal to emerge victorious. If you manage to perform well, you also had the chance to capture an officer of the enemy side and use him later on for your own army. And this is where the badassery really takes off. Later in the game, you will have to maneuver more than 2 sets of armies around the world map to achieve your goals. Having a lot of awesome officers and also depleting the number of good officers for your enemy is an amazing feeling which cannot be matched. I swear to God, there are few games where I cheered as much as in Dynasty Tactics. The only other game at the time where I completely lost it was probably Pokemon Red, back when I managed to capture Mewtwo without a Master Ball. Yeah, good old times. It is somehow comparable to that though. Having more powerful officers on the field also enables you to inflict more damage during combos, and I tell you, there's nothing more awesome than planning ahead and then execute your tactic only to see your enemies being demolished and killing more than 100,000 troops. Just watch!
Worthless carrion, out of my way!
After you have defeated your enemies, you would be rewarded with experience points, so there's also an RPG element to this game. And these experience points would level up your officers and grant them new tactics after a while. Closer to the end of the game, you would have a nice choice of different tactics and unit types, and finding the balance between cavalry, infantry and special troops like builders or heavy weapon engineers are the key for being successful in Dynasty Tactics. And if you successfully complete a chapter, you would be rewarded by a cutscene which continues the plot.
A few years after Sun Ce had gained control of Jiangxia, Cao Cao's forces begin advancing south. A terrified Jing province surrenders without a fight. Having easily obtained Jing, Cao Cao sends Sun Ce an ultimatum, ordering him to surrender or be destroyed.
Gotta love the cheesy voice acting though.
Cao Cao! Your reign of terror is at an end! You're not a hero! My bow is aimed for the heavens!
At the time, there were little strategy games for consoles, and even to this day there are just a few, so I will tend to say that Dynasty Tactics is one of the few really good strategy or tactic games for consoles out there. It's somehow weird though. I think back then there were much more strategy games for consoles than today. And of course it's also somehow obvious why that's the case. It's the controls. Just imagine playing StarCraft on a PlayStation or 360 controller. Too few buttons and too inaccurate controls to play it properly. And before anyone tries to play smart ass, yes, I know that StarCraft was also released for the Nintendo 64, but have you ever seen a pro match with N64 controllers? I bet you haven't. But come to think of it, that would actually be a fun idea. But speaking from today's perspective, plugging a mouse and keyboard into a console shouldn't be that much of a big deal today. So I hope that consoles get their fair share of strategy games sooner or later again. But now, before I totally get off track, let me finish this video by absolutely recommending it to each and every one of you who is into this kind of game. Sure, the ancient China fantasy vibe is not everybody's cup of tea, and from time to time the dialogue just gets plain ridiculous, but if you look past all that, you will see that Dynasty Tactics was and still is one of the hidden gems of the PlayStation 2 library. And who knows, maybe you'll even become a fan of the franchise. I actually did not intend to do an episode for this game so soon, but I simply couldn't stop playing, just like 10 years ago. And I know that I didn't pick a specific moment as well, but I hope that's fine with you guys. If you can get a hold of this game, make sure to dive right into it. And I assure you, it's more than worth it. And of course, there are also a lot of other spin-offs in this franchise, some more classic than others, but that's another story. And that's today's show for you. Thank you very much for watching, it's really much appreciated. If you really enjoyed this episode, make sure to press the like button. And if you didn't, make sure to leave some feedback in the comment section below. And also it's really much appreciated if you subscribe, favorite or share with your friends. It really helps spreading the word and letting everybody know that this show exists. And until next time, take care, have a good one, and goodbye. At the time I was hugely into Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos and considered that to be the best RPG. RTS, RPS, RTG. RTG? What?